Chrysler used to build cars and missiles. Ford built satellites until 1990. General Mills, the cereal company, built torpedoes and inertial guidance systems in their mechanics division.
No shit.
Everything they learned about building machinery to process cereal, they were able to leverage in the service of national security to make our warfighters more lethal. And what happened was that over time, the government became such a difficult buyer to work with. All sorts of esoteric rules that only matter for the government, all sorts of auditing, all sorts of bureaucracy, that people tried to figure out how to exit that business. That started in the 70s. Boardroom started talking about it. It accelerated in the 80s. And then when the Last Supper happened in 1993, there was this dinner in the Pentagon. We used to have 51 major defense primes. The 15 largest together, they had a dinner and they said, we need a peace dividend. We've won the Cold War. We're going to slash defense spending. So for every dollar we used to spend, we're going to spend 33 cents. And it's going to happen all at once. You guys are not all going to survive. You have our permission to consolidate, to merge, to try to find commercial lines of business, like do what you need to do. And we let that happen until 1999 when we blocked the merger of Lockheed and Northrop. We said, okay, this is too much. So we went from 51 down to 5. The popular narrative is this is when we lost competition in the industrial base. That definitely happened, but I don't think it's the dominant problem. The dominant problem is you lost a consolidation-bred conformity.
Predictive policing software. You guys are involved in that.
We don't do predictive policing. It's widely believed publicly we do, but we don't. And it has probably the most scary name possible. I think a better way of thinking about it is it's about resource allocation. Where should I preposition police to deter violence? We look at the historic data. We see there's a lot of stabbings at this Jack in the Box at 2 a.m. on weekends when the temperature is pleasant enough for people to be outside roaming around. Make the presence known, deter any bad actors and behavior. That's been effective. I think the branding of it has been really detrimental, but there is a clear correlation between the presence of policing and deterring violence. The other aspect of it too is just understanding, particularly with gang violence, it's usually a cycle of retribution. This person got killed. Okay, well, the family of the person that got killed, their gang knows who did it. There's going to be retaliation. So if you can figure out ahead of time these relationships, you can have presence there to suppress the ability for retaliation to happen without consequence, which then hopefully gives time and space to quiet down the violence.
The reverse opium war. Can you go into that?
We had the opium war where really the Chinese felt like a lot of drugs were flooding into China. The reverse opium war is the Chinese are funding and enabling fentanyl precursors to be shipped to Mexico to then be funneled into our country. We lose at least 100,000 Americans to this war every year. It is an ungodly casualty rate, and it's not just happening on its own. If we were losing even a fraction of this number of people to kinetic attacks, we would have a radically different posture to what's happening here. I think some of this is our own conflicted and I think retrograde feelings of, is it the fault of the person who's using the drug? But you have to really step back and recognize the environment that's what is enabling all of this to happen. It's a tragedy at a big scale. Obviously, the cartels bear a lot of responsibility, but these precursors are coming from somewhere. And the Chinese have so much control over their economy. If they didn't want it to go, it wouldn't go.
How long ago was the opium war?
Was that the 1800s?
Was it that long ago?
Yeah.
Why were we doing it?
You know, it was economic expansion where people were trying to trade with China at the time. You had the collapse of the historic dynasty, the beginning of the century of humiliation. If you thought about cost per kill, it's pretty cheap. It disintegrates society. It weakens families. It causes a lot of trauma. It weakens our will. It distracts us from doing the things we need to do around our economic prosperity, around reindustrialization, around taking them seriously as a threat. He had 3 failures and he was 1 launch away from losing the whole business. And he said, you know, I was there and the SpaceX facility is right next to the Boeing facility. And you go to the SpaceX facility and you compare it to the Boeing. The Boeing facility is like a clean room. You're wearing a bunny suit. It looks so sophisticated. SpaceX, it's open air, parts on a table, things are rusting. And you're just like, these guys are never going to make it. They don't know what they're doing. But you fundamentally misunderstood what was happening there. It's not where are they today? It's what's the first derivative? How quickly are they improving? How good is that team? That is the world's best team. And look what's possible now. Our launch capability is unmatched. When I was a kid growing up, shuttle, it used to cost $50,000 per kilogram to get to orbit. With Starship Heavy reuse, it'll be 10 to 20 bucks. I mean, it's just orders of magnitude difference, right? And I think there was something like that in the early days for us, which is, this seems like a joke. Who are these kids running around in shorts? How do you spend $11 billion on high-speed rail in California and have 1,600 feet of track that goes nowhere with a government institution that's really proud about how many jobs they created by doing this? You compare that to SpaceX. They've only spent $9.6 billion and they put more than 300 rockets into orbit. We spent $40 billion on rural broadband and have no rural broadband. We've spent $80 billion on electric chargers and I think we had like 8. Part of the disease that we're facing is this idea that all you need to do is cut a check. Like money will just solve the problem. Money enables the founder personality. Money enables people to do the work.
I heard you downstairs talking a little bit about Operation Paperclip?
So Operation Paperclip was our covert action to bring the very best scientists from Nazi Germany to the US to enable our defense program, in particular our rocket and space program. You can think about how hard that would be. These were our sworn enemies. These were horrible people. They did horrible things. They absolutely did. But they were, without exception, the world leaders in this capability. And they could either fall into the hands of the Soviets, and that would only create more problems, or we could bring them here, hold our nose, and figure out how to rehabilitate them and use that for our own economic prosperity and national advantage and security. And we did that. But I think what's really instructive about Operation Paperclip is there was two competing programs. One was Operation Paperclip, and the other one was called Fiat. Fiat was this idea that we don't need these dirty scientists. Let's just steal the scientific papers. Let's take the technical documents, and we'll be able to learn from the documents alone. It was a catastrophic failure. It turns out there is something special about the human, separate and apart from just what they wrote down on a piece of paper, that there's more to replicating these things than math.
How did we get them?
CIA operation. The reason it was called Paperclip, they would come in through the front door through State Department, which obviously would screen out Nazis. So you had to have some sort of cover, some sort of ability to do it. We would have these files and we would resettle them.
Should we be doing that today?
We should.